Coming home. For the first time in almost 15 years, Olivia Carter stared out from her car window as the familiar landscape of Willow Creek slowly unfolded before her. Once, this quaint town nestled between rolling hills and golden fields had felt like the center of her universe. Now, to Olivia, an executive who had long ago traded small-town life for the relentless pulse of New York City, it seemed impossibly small and suffocating. Returning was never part of her plan. New York had been her refuge, her escape from painful memories and the shadows of a fractured family. Yet as soon as her phone rang that gray November afternoon, and her stepmother's subdued voice relayed the news of her father's sudden passing, duty, obligation, and something deeper had called her back. As she navigated the winding roads leading toward her childhood home, Olivia felt a chorus of emotions: anxiety, sorrow, and an old, simmering resentment she hadn't fully acknowledged. She passed landmarks loaded with memory: the weather-beaten iron sign of Carter's Hardware, the abandoned playground where she and Amanda had once fought over a swing, the whitewashed church with the chipped steeple. Everything seemed untouched by time, but she knew better. Beneath the surface, old wounds ran deep in Willow Creek. Olivia's mother, Dolores, had raised her alone for most of her childhood, after a humiliating divorce that split the Carter family in two. The whispers that followed had made them outsiders. Kindness was rare, judgment abundant. Her father, Charles Carter, had started a new family with Amanda's mother on the right side of town. Holidays and birthdays became battlegrounds, and a silent, painful rivalry began between the two girls, fueled by jealousy, favoritism, and secrets that no one ever spoke aloud. Olivia parked in front of the Carter house, a grand, ivy-covered colonial that loomed over the manicured lawn as forbidding as ever. The sight tugged at 1,000 half-buried memories: her mother standing on the porch, clutching court papers; Amanda's mocking laugh from an upstairs window. It had been easier, once, to just leave and close that chapter forever. No sooner had she stepped out of the car than she was struck by the cold, brittle air, a stark contrast to the humid buzz of summer she remembered as a girl. The streets were quiet, save for the distant bark of a neighbor's dog. Olivia lingered a moment, steeling herself. She was no longer that frightened child, desperate for belonging. She was Olivia Carter, successful, independent, hardened by the city. Inside, the house felt museum-like, heavy with silence, pictures lining the walls, many of which Olivia was not featured in. The scent was a mixture of polished wood and the faint touch of old perfume. She exchanged awkward greetings with her stepmother, Martha, whose icy politeness masked something unspoken. Olivia's eyes scanned the foyer, searching for Amanda, but finding only a trace of perfume, a delicate scarf tossed carelessly on the banister. That evening, as mourners trickled in and out to pay their respects, Olivia played the role expected of her: dutiful daughter, stoic and unreadable. She watched Amanda from across the room, immaculate in black, gracious as she accepted condolences, every gesture rehearsed. The estrangement between them was palpable and complete. Neighbors whispered in corners, their eyes darting between the half-sisters. Pity for Olivia, deference for Amanda. As the night deepened and the house emptied, Olivia walked the familiar halls in solitude. Photographs, trinkets, and echoes of long-ago conversations haunted her steps. She sat in her old room, stripped now of her belongings, repainted for some unknown purpose, and felt the ache of everything she had lost and everything she was again forced to confront. With every minute spent in Willow Creek, Olivia realized this trip would be more than a fleeting obligation. Something wasn't right. She felt it in the stilted glances, the uneasy silences, the undercurrent of hostility that still clung to her after all this time. By the time the lights dimmed and the night pressed in, a single, unshakable determination had taken root. She would not let the past swallow her again. Whatever secrets the Carter family had buried, Olivia knew, she would uncover them. And this time, she was ready. The funeral and family secrets. The next morning dawned gray and somber, a sky thick with clouds that seemed to press down on the town of Willow Creek. The Carter house bustled with the subdued energy of preparation. Casserole dishes arriving at the door, muted footsteps in the upstairs hallway, the distant hum of quiet conversations. Olivia found herself adrift in the activity, a ghost in her own childhood home, watching but rarely engaging. Standing before her father's casket, Olivia was struck by the surreal silence that enveloped the parlor. Charles Carter had always seemed larger than life, but here, in an open casket surrounded by lilies and stern family portraits, he looked oddly small. His features were stiff with preservation, an echo of the man whose decisions had shaped the destinies of two fractured families. Her heart wavered between grief, disappointment, and a sense of cold detachment she could neither name nor explain. Friends, acquaintances, and townsfolk filtered in, their presence filling the rooms with tension masked as sympathy. The church pews filled with neighbors who had watched her grow up, some who had turned away from her mother during the ugly divorce, others who had spread rumors or offered forced smiles in the grocery store. Olivia could feel eyes lingering on her, measuring her against the image of the prodigal daughter returned. Her stepmother, Martha, glided through the crowd with the practiced grace of a hostess, her words polite, but her posture rigid. Olivia watched Martha exchange whispers with Uncle Howard, the family's self-appointed patriarch, and felt the sting of not belonging. Amanda, draped in elegant black, never left her mother's side, perfectly composed as she greeted guests, her somber expression unbroken, even as her eyes slid coldly past Olivia's. The service itself was a blur of hymns and eulogies. The local pastor recited well-worn scripture, glossing over the complexities of the Carter family history. Words like legacy, honor, and community floated in the heavy air. Amanda delivered a eulogy that was precise and heartfelt, speaking of Charles Carter's contributions to the hardware business, his generosity, and his unwavering pride in his family. Not once did she mention Olivia or Dolores by name. During the reception that followed, Olivia moved through the rooms with a practiced grace of her own, answering condolences and avoiding the probing questions about her life in New York. There was a current of suspicion and rivalry just beneath the surface. Cousin Ruth clung to Olivia's hand a moment longer, murmuring, "If your mama were here, she'd be proud. Don't let them get to you." Olivia wondered what Ruth knew, and what secrets had been quietly passed from one generation to another. In the kitchen, she caught snippets of conversation, family members wondering aloud about the will, whispers about Charles's second family, quiet judgments masked as concern. A few old friends offered hesitant smiles. Most kept their distance. Everyone seemed aware of a boundary invisibly drawn between the real Carters and Olivia's branch of the family. Late that afternoon, with the sky threatening rain, Olivia wandered out onto the back porch, seeking a moment to breathe. Amanda followed, shoulders squared, her presence impossible to ignore. They exchanged perfunctory condolences, their voices each layered with old hurt. "You always leave when things get complicated," Amanda said quietly, her meaning unmistakable. Olivia bristled, but said nothing, unwilling to give Amanda the satisfaction of a fight, at least not yet. Instead, she looked past her sister to the distant fields beyond the property line, the land that had once meant home, and now symbolized so much more. In that heavy silence, Olivia sensed there were truths festering beneath the surface, hidden in the sideward glances and careful silences of the mourners inside. As dusk settled, guests slowly departed, leaving behind a hush that felt both peaceful and foreboding. Olivia lingered in the parlor long after Martha and Amanda retreated upstairs, staring at the ancestral portraits, gazing down in silent judgment. Why, she wondered, did it feel like everyone in Willow Creek knew something she didn't? What had her father really left behind, besides this legacy of bitterness and doubt? The questions pressed down on Olivia as she made her way up to the guest room that night, exhausted but restless. She knew this funeral was only the beginning. Secrets had a way of surfacing, sometimes in whispers, sometimes in storms. And Olivia was determined somehow to bring every last one of them to light. The unfair will. The morning after the funeral, Willow Creek was drenched in mist and an uneasy quiet. Olivia hardly slept. Her mind spun all night with fragments of conversation, old memories, and a growing sense of dread she tried unsuccessfully to push aside. Still, she forced herself up and dressed with care, determined to face another day in the Carter house as quietly dignified as possible. Mid-morning brought the family's lawyer, Martin Ellis, a longtime associate of her late father. Martin arrived in a charcoal suit, his gray hair slicked back, carrying a slim briefcase and an expression betraying both resolve and discomfort. Olivia noticed Amanda and Martha already waiting for him in the formal sitting room, a space rarely used except for special occasions or difficult business. The air inside felt close, as if the house itself was holding its breath. Olivia took her seat across from Amanda, her half-sister's composure as unshakable as before, eyes betraying no emotion as she smoothed the skirt of her tailored black dress. Martha sat upright beside her daughter, hands folded, lips pursed in anticipation. The trio of women could not have appeared more different or been more alike, Olivia thought. A tangle of blood ties and betrayals, linked by generations of silent struggle. Martin cleared his throat, opened the briefcase, and began reading the will. His words were formal, measured, a recitation of legalese naming assets, properties, and stocks, recounting the holdings and the heritage of the Carter family in stark, impersonal terms. Olivia listened with a mixture of detachment and mounting unease, her mind drifting until her own name finally echoed in the room. To her dismay, the will was shockingly clear. The house, Carter's hardware, the bank accounts, and all other significant assets were left solely to Amanda Carter. Olivia's share was little more than a token, a modest trust fund with strict limitations, in recognition of family ties. Her mother, Dolores, was not mentioned at all. The room was silent except for the soft ticking of the grandfather clock. Every muscle in Olivia's body tensed. Part of her had braced for this. Her father's favoritism over the years had long been clear, but seeing it spelled out with legal certainty cut deeper than she expected. Martha seemed satisfied, barely hiding a small, tight smile. Amanda didn't look at Olivia at all. Martin concluded with a few tepid words about respecting Charles's wishes, then quietly gathered his things. Amanda, with studied calm, thanked the lawyer and assured him the family would be fine. Martha stood and excused herself, but not before offering Olivia a stiff pat on the shoulder. "Is that all?" Olivia asked, her voice sharper than she intended. "Was there ever any other version of the will, or—" Martin paused, avoiding her gaze. "This is the most recent and legally binding document on file," he replied. He hesitated just a moment too long, and in that hesitation, Olivia caught a flicker of discomfort, a sign she'd remember. After Martin left, Amanda lingered, her mask of polite indifference slipping just enough to reveal a shadow of triumph. "You probably want to go through Dad's things," she said, voice cool. "Take whatever mementos you like, just be respectful." Olivia's jaw clenched. "Respect," she repeated quietly. "Seems like a one-way street in this house." Amanda's eyes narrowed, but she offered nothing further. Left alone in the echoing quiet, Olivia paced the length of the room, trying to process what had just happened. Every surface around her, mahogany tables, framed photographs, even the patterned sofa, spoke to a family lineage she'd always been half excluded from. Her father's study, visible through the frosted glass doors, seemed to call to her, full of secrets and finalities. She remembered her mother's years of struggle, running a small apartment, scraping by on little, and fielding awkward questions from neighbors who always looked toward the Carter house with envy and suspicion. Anger and sorrow mingled into resolve. Whatever had happened here, she needed to understand it fully, not only for herself, but for her mother's memory. She began making mental notes. The precisely dated will, Martin's rare uneasiness, Amanda's oddly cordial generosity. By the afternoon, Olivia started reaching out to distant relatives and old family friends, careful to keep her tone neutral. She reviewed old letters, emails, and photographs, hunting for incongruities. One cousin mentioned that Charles Carter had been in declining health near the end, relying increasingly on Amanda and Martha to manage his affairs. Another alluded, too quietly, to tension between the sisters, but quickly grew nervous and changed the subject. That evening, as Olivia retreated to her childhood room and pulled the faded quilt over her shoulders, she stared at the ceiling and made herself a promise. Amanda's victory wouldn't stand unexamined. There were always papers, always trails, always people who knew more than they were willing to say. And for the first time since her return, Olivia felt the first stirrings of strategy, an instinct honed over years in the city, now sharpened by the very injustice that had always threatened to define her. The fight for what was truly hers, her mother's dignity, her own place in the Carter legacy, had only just begun. Signs of suspicion. Olivia awoke the next morning feeling the oppressive weight of the previous day pressing down on her chest. For a long moment, she lay still beneath the unfamiliar ceiling of the Carter guest room. The faded floral wallpaper and starched linens somehow more alien than her Manhattan studio's cold minimalism. The silence that blanketed the house wasn't the peace of mourning, but the tension of something tightly wound, ready to snap. Outside, branches tapped against the window pane, the first of the autumn winds shaking loose leaves and memories alike. She dressed deliberately, pulling on dark jeans and a navy sweater, something practical, the color of resolve. The kitchen was empty, except for a forgotten mug of tea on the counter and a neatly folded newspaper by the sink. From the hallway, muffled voices drifted. Martha talking low on the phone, Amanda's measured footsteps across the hardwood. Olivia moved quietly, not yet willing to face them, and poured herself coffee. The bitterness brought her fully awake, sharpening the restless thoughts that had haunted her since the reading of the will. She replayed Martin Ellis's words in her head, the crisp announcement of Amanda as sole heir, the awkward silence, the carefully rehearsed lines about family ties. Why would her father, who, despite his failings, had always sent birthday cards and called it Christmas, leave her nothing but a tightly restricted trust fund? Why erase all mention of Dolores, as if her mother had never existed? Her instincts, honed by years surviving the high-stakes legal world of New York, finally stirred. In her professional life, Olivia had learned that patterns in paperwork rarely lied, even if people did. She decided to dig deeper, to treat the events of Willow Creek like any other case full of conflicting interests, hidden motives, and subtle misinformation. Her first step was the Home Office. Later that morning, after Amanda and Martha left for what they claimed was a bank meeting, Olivia seized the opportunity. The office was locked, but her father's habits were predictable. A spare key hung on a thumbtack inside the hall closet, concealed behind winter coats. She slipped inside and closed the door quietly behind her. The office was as she remembered. Shelves crammed with ledgers, binders lined up like soldiers, stacks of mail dating back several years. The room's only deviation from neatness was an overstuffed file cabinet and the swirl of dust in a shaft of light from the single window. A heavy leather chair stood behind the desk, her father's throne,
darling.
and on the blotter rested a battered manila envelope marked Estate Carter. Olivia's heart thumped as she slid the envelope open. Inside were drafts of legal documents, an older will from 3 years back, in which she and Amanda had shared the estate equally. A sticky note attached to the envelope read, in her father's script, "To discuss with Martin, don't sign yet." But that will was unsigned and undated. She checked the more recent paperwork, comparing signatures side by side. The new will, the one Martin had read aloud, was dated 2 months ago, a time, Olivia realized, when her father had already been in and out of the hospital. The signature looked shaky. The flourish at the end of the C in Carter was different. Less confident, the loop missing. Olivia's eyes narrowed. For a man so proud of his penmanship, this would be uncharacteristic, especially on a document of such magnitude. She took out her phone, snapped photos of the documents, and continued searching. Tucked between property deeds and insurance forms was a business card. James L. Montgomery, private investigator. On the back, in Charles Carter's hand, were the words, "Call Amanda, Martha, do not mention to Martin." Olivia stared at the card, her mind racing. Why would her father hire an investigator to look into his own wife and daughter? Suddenly, footsteps echoed from the hall. She froze, heart hammering. A shadow passed under the door, then receded. Olivia slipped the envelope back into its drawer and made sure everything was as she had found it before quietly letting herself out. That close brush left her more resolute. It was clear her father had doubts about Martin, about Amanda and Martha, maybe even about his own lucidity near the end. Later, in town, Olivia walked deliberately, her coat buttoned up against the wind. She stopped by the Willow Creek Diner under the pretense of grabbing lunch. The bell over the door chimed, drawing the quick glances of waitresses and regulars. Word of her return had clearly traveled. She slid into a booth by the window and pulled out a notepad. She made a list of names, family, business associates, old friends of her father. She circled a few, Cousin Ruth, Uncle Howard, the aging store manager, Mr. Forsyth, who might have noticed changes or suspicious activity in the months before Charles's death. These were people who had lived with the Carters' drama for decades, people who might confide details if approached with care. As she wrote, her thoughts drifted to childhood. She recalled cold winters when her mother struggled to scrape together enough for rent while the Carter house remained ablaze with Christmas lights. She remembered Amanda's sly taunts at school, the shadowy looks from teachers who never quite bought into the scandal but quietly chose sides. These memories galvanized her resolve further. This fight was about more than money. It was about justice for herself and for Dolores. Returning to the house that evening, Olivia caught Amanda on the porch, phone pressed to her ear, voice low and urgent. Their eyes met, and for a second, Amanda seemed startled. She ended the call abruptly and smiled, too quickly, too wide. Amanda bristled but chose silence, and Olivia took that opportunity to slip inside. She returned to her room and carefully saved the document photos to the cloud for safety. That night, Olivia called the number on the private investigator's card. It rang twice, then switched to voicemail. "You've reached Jim Montgomery. Leave a message and I'll get back to you." Sleep eluded her again. Olivia imagined her father's doubts, his declining health, the way he must have felt trapped by the women closest to him. Women he trusted, but perhaps didn't really know. Was Martha manipulating him, steering decisions as he grew frail? Had Amanda taken advantage of proximity and her father's weakness to exert her will? The shadows in the room seemed to lengthen. Olivia stared at the faint glow of her phone, waiting for a callback that felt like destiny. She understood now that her suspicions weren't born of spite, but of necessity. Something was wrong. She could feel it in the signatures, in Amanda's hurried explanations, in the private jokes she wasn't meant to overhear. This was no longer just the story of a woman returning home to bury her father. It was the beginning of an investigation, the setting of a private trial, and Olivia, for all her wounds and weariness, was ready for the fight. An unexpected alliance. The morning after her discovery in the office, Olivia woke with a purpose that cut through her fatigue. The night had been restless, mind spinning with images of her father's trembling signature and that business card inked with suspicion. Outside, the late fall air was crisp, sunlight filtering through thinning branches. The Carter house, for all its stately charm, felt more than ever like a fortress of secrets. Determined to find someone she could trust, Olivia scrolled through her phone for names, the few who hadn't turned away during her mother's hardest years. She paused on one, Ruth Parker. Ruth, a distant cousin on her mother's side, had been her childhood confidant long ago. Where Amanda bullied, Ruth protected, sometimes at her own risk. Olivia remembered afternoons after school, waiting in Ruth's sunlit kitchen, while the smell of cinnamon rolls curled through the air, feeling, for a few precious moments, like family didn't have to hurt. There was a tentative hope as she dialed Ruth's number. The line rang twice before Ruth answered, her voice warm yet wary. Sadie's Cafe clung to the edge of Willow Creek's main street, its windows fogged with the steam of brewing espresso and gossip. Ruth was already waiting in a corner booth, wrapped in a gray cardigan, hands around a mug, her presence as gentle and grounded as Olivia remembered. They hugged, a little awkward, but genuine. Light filtered across Ruth's face, blurring memories of high school solidarity and family picnics that ended in whispered fights. Olivia ordered black coffee, steeling herself. "Ruth," she began, "I know this is abrupt, but I need to ask you something. You always saw through things in this town. There's something wrong with my father's will." Ruth's eyes darkened. "Folks been whispering about it. You deserved better, Olivia. Everyone knows it, even if they won't say out loud. Your daddy was no saint, but he did care. He told me once he worried about Amanda and Martha. Didn't like how they hovered over him after his diagnosis." A jolt of relief and gratitude ran through Olivia. "Did you notice anything strange? Anyone pressuring him? Because the will that was read leaves me almost nothing, and I found a draft, unsigned, where he treats Amanda and me equally. The signatures don't match." Ruth lowered her voice. "After he got sick, Martha barely let anyone see him except Amanda. Even I was turned away. I saw your daddy at church, maybe 2 months ago. He looked worn, confused. He said he wanted to set some things right, but Martha cut our talk short." Olivia's hand tightened around her cup. "So they isolated him." Ruth nodded. "After Martha moved in, everything changed. Amanda started showing up at the store, acting like Queen Bee. Folks said she was always carrying legal papers, fussing about bank accounts." Olivia listened intently as Ruth recounted more. Amanda's controlling streak, Martha's penchant for keeping track of every visitor, the way Martin Ellis, the family lawyer, seemed eager to avoid answering questions about the estate. "I'm not the only one with doubts," Ruth concluded. "Uncle Howard said your daddy didn't recognize his own cousin on his last birthday, but Amanda told everyone it was just the meds." They sat in silence for a moment as the clatter of dishes and hum of conversation filled the background. Emboldened by Ruth's support, Olivia pulled out her phone and scrolled to the photos she'd taken. The two wills, the signatures, the investigator's card. She stopped at the note in her father's shaky handwriting. Call Ree, Amanda, Martha. Do not mention to Martin. She showed the images to Ruth, who studied them with a frown. Olivia, this signature here, that's not how your daddy wrote his C's. He always flourished the tail. I used to work the counter at the store. When folks signed paperwork, he'd joke about his fine Southern penmanship. Martha couldn't forge his writing if she tried. Amanda, either. Olivia felt a surge of gratitude for Ruth's insight, the sort of detail only someone who had lived close could know. They talked through strategies. Ruth could ask quiet questions at church or among the older crowd at the diner, people who noticed the comings and goings at the Carter home. Plenty of folks won't say a word to a Carter, Ruth said, but they'll spill their hearts to me. They agreed to trade any new information and keep their meetings secret. Amanda and Martha have ears everywhere, Ruth warned. Be careful, Liv. This family, they don't give up power easy. That afternoon, Olivia's next move was to visit her father's old friend, Mr. Forsyth, the longtime manager at Carter's Hardware. The store was quieter than she remembered, but Mr. Forsyth greeted her warmly, his eyes scanning her face for traces of her father. They made small talk about the weather, the store, and the town's changes. But when Olivia gently inquired about the months before Charles's death, Mr. Forsyth's tone shifted. Your dad was like a brother to me. Truth is, he changed a lot after Martha took charge. Started second-guessing himself, lost track of paperwork, left decisions up to Amanda. Sometimes he'd come in the back office and just sit, staring at nothing. I figured he was worried about something, maybe more than just his health. Olivia pressed. Do you remember anyone else visiting him? Anyone new? Any conversations that seemed off? He hesitated, then nodded. Martin came by a lot, always closed doors, quiet voices. Once, I overheard Amanda arguing with your dad about the future of the business and protecting what's rightfully ours. She was upset, said something about not letting outsiders claim the legacy. Your father told her everything needed to be fair. They exchanged a look that told Olivia enough. Amanda and Martha had planned this for months, steering her father and the family business where they wanted. That evening, Olivia and Ruth met again, this time at Ruth's small clapboard house on the edge of town. As the sun set, Ruth passed her a faded folder. Letters from your father. I kept them for you. Thought you might come back one day. He wrote about you often, how proud he was, even if he never said it outright. He wanted to fix things, Olivia. Over tea and cookies, they pored over the old correspondence, piecing together a timeline. Her father's intent to make amends, the gradual isolation after Martha consolidated her role, Amanda's increasingly bold actions with the company. They discovered references to a mysterious insurance policy and mentions of legal advice her father never seemed to follow through on. With every new scrap of evidence, Olivia's resolve hardened. She now had what she lacked, an ally. Ruth's friendship offered not just comfort, but practical support, a way to navigate a community where allegiances were as tangled as the Carter family tree. Before leaving, Ruth clasped Olivia's hands. You're not alone in this no more here. We'll get to the bottom of it, for your mama's sake, for yours. The words steadied Olivia's heart. For the first time since her return, she felt something other than loneliness, something like hope, sharp and clear. She knew the fight ahead wouldn't be easy. Amanda and Martha would not yield power without a struggle. But with Ruth beside her, the odds no longer felt so impossible. In the hush of Willow Creek's night, Olivia understood. Uncovering the truth was her duty, but reclaiming her dignity would be her triumph. The battle of wits. The mood at the Carter house had shifted unmistakably. Where grief once hovered, now suspicion and calculation lingered in the halls. Olivia could sense Amanda and Martha circling closer, weighing every move, every word she spoke, with a wary precision. She met their gazes with equal care, determined not to let her anger over the will, nor her mounting frustration, show on her face. She would fight smart. She owed herself, and her mother, nothing less. The first true test came the next morning over breakfast. Martha sat at the head of the table, the silverware perfectly aligned, as if maintaining appearances could somehow restore their broken family. Amanda arrived last, impeccable as always, her dark hair pinned back, a look of controlled patience on her face. "So, Olivia," Amanda said, her tone breezy but eyes razor sharp. "Any plans while you're here? Or is New York calling you home already?" Olivia sipped her coffee, refusing to be baited. "I thought I'd stay through the week, maybe longer. Lots to take care of. Dad left quite a legacy after all." She emphasized the last words, noting Amanda's subtle flinch. Martha coughed delicately. "It would be best for everyone to move on as quickly as possible. These legal matters are behind us now. Charles was always a man of decisive action. No sense dragging things out." Amanda nodded, but the tiniest twitch in her hand, the way she toyed with her napkin, gave her away. Olivia logged the gesture, one more crack in Amanda's mask. She decided to strike gently, testing the waters. Funny, Dad always liked to involve both his daughters when things really mattered. He didn't believe in secrets. I wonder if he might have wanted us both to go through his papers together, just for old time's sake. Amanda's eyes met hers, cool and bright. "The will says otherwise. If Dad wanted things done differently, he was never shy about saying so. Some of us had to stay behind and handle family business while others, well, some of us ran away." The barbs hung in the air, and for a moment, time telescoped back to childhood. Schoolyard fights, whispered taunts, slammed doors. Olivia suppressed the urge to lash out. Instead, she matched Amanda's gaze. "Sometimes we leave to survive. Other times, we stay to control what's left behind." Amanda's nostrils flared, but she said nothing more. Martha's discomfort blossomed into silence. Olivia excused herself and headed to her father's study, heart pounding. She'd sown a seed of doubt in Amanda's carefully cultivated confidence, and now she needed to keep pushing. Alone in the study, Olivia strategized. She made a new list of possible allies, names Ruth had mentioned, people who had noticed things but were too afraid to speak, or who owed her mother small debts of loyalty. She called Ruth for a quick check-in. "Keep listening around town. If anything feels off, especially from Martin or the bank, let me know right away." Ruth promised to be discreet. "Word is, Amanda's got her own secrets she doesn't want aired. Don't let her play innocent, Liv. She's got a mean streak when she wants something." Fueled by Ruth's warning, Olivia prepared her next move. She needed Amanda off balance, and more importantly, to make her slip up. She started dropping hints when Amanda was nearby, carelessly mentioning lawyers reviewing signatures, speculating aloud about hidden documents, and referencing her meeting with the private investigator, all without revealing specifics. Each time, Amanda's facade chipped further, her breath quickening, her polite smile turning brittle at the edges. One afternoon, Olivia accidentally left a folder of her findings on the kitchen counter, pages peeking out just enough for Amanda to see phrases like irregular signature and P.I. Montgomery, call back. Minutes later, she caught Amanda rifling through the papers, her expression stony. Olivia made her entrance as if by chance. "Oh, sorry, Amanda. Looking for something?" Amanda drew herself up. "You're making things more complicated than they need to be." Dad was very clear in his intentions. Olivia kept her tone light. "Then you have nothing to worry about, do you?" The tension was palpable. Amanda nearly spat her retort. "I'm not the villain you keep looking for, Olivia. If you weren't always so determined to cast yourself as the family martyr, maybe you'd see that." For a split second, the mask slipped. Pain flickered beneath Amanda's words. Olivia seized the opportunity. "You know, Amanda, sometimes people fight hardest for things they think they don't deserve." Amanda stiffened, the remark hitting too close. "Don't pretend you understand me," she hissed, before storming out. Martha watched from the hall, her arms crossed, her loyalties now plainly torn. That night, the storm inside Olivia matched the thunder rolling outside. Rain battered the windows as she pieced together Amanda's motivations. She spent hours poring over old photos, journals, and family letters, seeking clues to Amanda's bitterness. One letter from their father, written in shaky script during his final weeks, referenced regret and a desire for reconciliation, particularly with Olivia. Another entry in an old notebook hinted at his awareness of Amanda's jealousy and his hope that, one day, the girls will make peace. It became clear, Amanda's resentment wasn't simply about inheritance. She'd spent her life in the shadow of her mother's disapproval and Charles's unspoken comparisons between his two daughters. The more Olivia considered Amanda's past, always trying to live up, always being measured, her sister's need to control the legacy made bitter sense. But understanding Amanda didn't soften Olivia's resolve. If anything, it sharpened her strategy. She realized her greatest weapon was Amanda's desperate need for validation. If Olivia could push her to overextend, to make a mistake, the truth might finally surface. The following day, Olivia orchestrated an encounter in the backyard where they'd once played as children. She confronted Amanda privately, her tone layered with both challenge and pity. "I know this isn't just about Dad's money or the will, Amanda. We both lost something we can't ever get back. But whatever you're hiding, it won't heal anything. Maybe if you told the truth for once in your life, it would." For a moment, Amanda's bravado cracked. Eyes blazing, she spat. "I did what I had to do. You left. You don't get to come back and judge me. Dad, he wasn't always fair, you know. Not to either of us." Olivia stepped closer, voice steady. "I'm not judging you, but I am going to get to the truth. Whatever you and Martha did, the people in this town will find out, and so will the lawyers. Are you sure you want to risk that?" Amanda's shoulders slumped as the storm's fury began to break inside her. "You were always the strong one. Everyone saw it. I just wanted to be enough for Dad, for myself. I couldn't let you have everything. Not again." For the first time in years, Olivia saw her sister not as a rival, but as a deeply wounded woman, scrambling to protect the last shreds of her father's faded approval. The battle was far from over, but a new vulnerability shimmered beneath Amanda's hostility, a sign that she was finally cracking under the pressure. Olivia left her sister with a warning, but also with unexpected compassion. As night reclaimed Willow Creek, Olivia realized the endgame was near. The secrets were rising, and both sisters, battered and stripped of their old defenses, were about to discover what truly remained of the Carter family. The truth exposed. Willow Creek awoke to uneasy whispers the morning after the storm. The town was still, but news and speculation moved faster than any breeze through its wide streets. Word that the Carter family, long regarded as pillars of tradition and, to some, silent scandal, might be facing a new public reckoning traveled quickly.
It's done.
Olivia sensed a shift in the air, even before she opened her eyes, an unmistakable feeling that secrets long buried were about to claw themselves into daylight. She didn't have to wait long. While Olivia was still lacing her boots, her new attorney, Jessica Landry, called. Olivia had retained Jessica only days earlier, after finding the discrepancies in her father's signature and the evidence of manipulation. "I think it's time," Jessica said, her voice clear and firm. "We're ready to move forward with the paperwork and the request for a formal audit. The evidence you've gathered is significant, more than enough to make Martin Ellis and the rest nervous." Olivia felt a nervous energy rise inside her. "Do you think Amanda and Martha will see it coming?" Jessica let out a dry chuckle. "People who are used to controlling everything rarely believe anyone will challenge them, until it's too late." After ending the call, Olivia texted Ruth. Their alliance, now sealed by shared risk and mutual loyalty, had become the anchor through this ordeal. Ruth replied instantly. The first confrontation arrived not from Amanda, but from Martha. She stormed into the dining room that afternoon, cheeks blotched red. "How dare you drag this family's name through the mud with your wild accusations? Your father is barely in the grave, and you're already turning his legacy into a circus." Olivia stood her ground. "I'm only after the truth. If there's nothing to hide, then there should be no fear of questions." Martha's mouth twisted. "You've always wanted to see us fail." "That's not true," Olivia replied quietly, her voice steady, though her hands shook. "I just want what's fair, for myself, for my mother, and even for my father. No more secrets." Amanda avoided Olivia for hours, moving like a shadow, evasive but no longer confident. When she finally emerged, it was with a carefully neutral expression, only her trembling hands betraying her composure. The family gathered silently in the living room as Martin Ellis, summoned by Olivia's attorney, arrived with an air of forced dignity. The formality of the occasion heightened the tension. Outside, neighbors found excuses to walk dogs past the Carter house or pause while fetching mail, anything for a glimpse of drama at that big place on the hill. Jessica Landry arrived, efficient and brisk, carrying a folder thick with copies of the contested documents, both wills, the private investigator's card, evidence of Amanda and Martha's management of Charles Carter's affairs during his decline. Martin attempted his usual platitudes, but Jessica cut him short. "Mr. Ellis, as you well know, there are inconsistencies in these documents that warrant an audit and handwriting analysis. I will be retaining a forensic specialist. We'll also be calling for bank and property records to clarify any changes made while Charles Carter was in compromised health. My client has a right to transparency." Amanda's normally cool demeanor faltered. "This is harassment. This is our family's business." Jessica fixed her with an icy stare. "It's the law's business when fraud is suspected. Would you like to make a statement, Ms. Carter? Or perhaps you'd prefer to wait for your own counsel?" Silence stretched. For a moment, Olivia thought Amanda might burst into tears or rage. Instead, her half-sister stiffened, her jaw set with wounded pride, looking desperately to Martha for support. With the audit underway, rumors began to churn around Willow Creek. In places like Sadie's Cafe and Carter's Hardware, speculation turned to fact as details leaked out. Olivia tried to shield herself from the worst of it. She had expected cruelty, but the speed with which the town took sides stunned her. Some whispered that Olivia was ungrateful, stirring trouble for old wounds. Others, especially those who remembered Dolores's dignity and hardship, quietly rooted for Olivia, resentful of the privilege and arrogance of Amanda and Martha. Ruth became Olivia's link to the pulse of the town. "Don't let the gossip get to you," she said, handing her a note with names of people who'd seen Martha pressuring Charles at the bank, or Amanda forging her father's initials on deposit slips. As official testimony was gathered for the audit, new evidence surfaced. Mr. Forsyth, the faithful hardware store manager, revealed that Charles had tried to update his will months before his death, but was always intercepted by Amanda or Martha. He wanted to do right by both his daughters, Forsyth told Jessica, his hands trembling as he signed his statement. I saw the pain it caused him. He asked me once, "Do you think Olivia would ever forgive me?" I told him you would if he stopped letting others speak for him. Meanwhile, the forensic handwriting expert's report made clear what Olivia had suspected. The signature on the new will was not solely Charles Carter's. Elements in the pen pressure and letter shape were inconsistent with the older documents. The report's conclusion was damning: probable forgery. Amanda's breakdown came not in public, but late at night, in her bedroom with only Olivia present. Unable to sleep, Olivia heard muffled sobs down the hall. Compelled by the weight of everything, anger, resignation, sisterhood, she knocked gently and found Amanda curled, exhausted, on her bed. I didn't know how to stop it, Amanda whispered, voice thin and ragged. Mama, she wouldn't let anyone near Daddy, and I just went along. I told myself it was for the good of the family. Olivia didn't reply at first, struggling with fury and pity. At length, she said, "The truth was always worth the pain. You could have trusted me, Amanda." Amanda stared at the ceiling, tears streaking her face. I was afraid I'd have nothing, afraid that Dad never loved me the way he loved you, or at least the way I thought he did. That house, the money, it felt like the only thing left that meant I was chosen. It never had to be a competition, Olivia said, her voice finally soft. The following morning, Amanda made her confession official. With Jessica, Martin, and the handwriting expert present, she recounted everything: how Martha had coached her, how she justified each lie, and how guilt had poisoned her relationship with everyone in the family. Olivia's testimony, Ruth's statements, the forensic evidence, and public confession left Martha isolated and defenseless. Legal proceedings loomed, but Olivia felt a kind of exhausted relief settle over the household. The Carter family's secrets, their bitterness, betrayals, and regrets, were now out in the open. Willow Creek was left to decide whether to condemn or forgive. But for Olivia, the worst burden was finally lifted. She had fought for truth and found it, no matter the cost. Confrontation and liberation. The clouds hung heavy over Willow Creek on the day everything finally came apart. A hush seemed to settle over the town. The Carter legacy, no longer just fodder for gossip in church pews and cafe booths, but a living saga being rewritten in real time.
I just want to ensure that
Inside the Carter house, the air was thick with things unspoken and truths unburied. Olivia felt every heartbeat echo as she prepared for the final conversation she knew she and Amanda could no longer avoid. Amanda had spent most of the last 2 days shut away in her room or pacing the edge of the property, her once unshakable poise now replaced by a wary defensiveness. She barely spoke to Martha, who herself had shriveled into a silent, shadowy figure, avoiding Olivia's eyes. Yet, it was Amanda Olivia needed to face. The legal ordeal was now in Jessica's steady hands. What remained was something only sisters could settle, for better or worse. Olivia found Amanda at dusk, sitting on the back steps where the house met the tangled garden plot. Their father never quite managed to keep tamed. Amanda's gaze was fixed on the withered stalks, an image of resignation. For a moment, Olivia simply stood beside her, their breath visible in the chilled autumn air. Amanda broke the silence first, her voice raw. "It's all out there now, isn't it? Dad's name? This family? I never wanted it to be like this." She wrapped her arms around her knees, seeming far younger than her years. Olivia sat beside her, the tension between them taut but no longer dangerous. None of us did. But that doesn't mean we weren't responsible for how we got here. Tell me the truth, Amanda. For once, without rehearsal. Amanda fumbled for words, her defenses falling away bit by bit. I was scared, Liv. After Dad's last fall, Martha took over everything. She said you'd always find a way to take it all if we weren't careful. She told me stories about Mom losing everything to your mother in court, about how Dad regretted splitting the legacy. It got hard to tell what was true anymore. Olivia's voice was surprisingly gentle. You could have asked me, Amanda. I would have told you the truth. Even when I left, it wasn't to abandon you. I just couldn't live under those shadows.
This is all the proof we
Amanda's
need, David.
eyes filled with tears, her voice trembling. I hated you for so long, because I thought you were brave for leaving, and I was so scared I'd never be enough to keep this family together. Dad could be generous, but he never really knew how to make us feel safe, did he? They sat in silence, the wind rustling the dead leaves at their feet. Olivia studied her sister, the slope of her shoulders, the grief etched around her mouth. After so many battles, what remained was not rivalry, but two women finally stripped of everything except honesty. I'm sorry for hating you, Amanda whispered, and I'm sorry for what I did. Martha, she twisted things, but I chose to go along. Olivia felt a sharp ache in her chest, something like both pain and forgiveness.
I just saw him
I
leave.
know, but being sorry and making it right aren't the same. You're doing the right thing now. Amanda nodded, swiping at her cheeks. I'm ready for whatever comes. If they take the house, the store, let them. What matters is, I don't have to look over my shoulder every day, and that maybe, somehow, you might forgive me. Olivia took Amanda's hand, hesitantly at first, and squeezed it. Maybe one day I will. Maybe starting now. But you have to forgive yourself, too. The door creaked open behind them. Martha appeared, eyes swollen, posture rigid. She had been summoned for questioning and now faced a future of her own making. A future without the Carter fortune, and perhaps without Amanda's loyalty. She hovered, as if to join them, but Amanda shook her head. No more secrets, Mom. We're done hiding. The three women stood together, the final vestiges of a broken dynasty exposed. For the first time since Olivia's return, she felt no urge to run. Something fundamental inside her had shifted. After a long silence, Olivia turned her attention to closure. She spent the next day moving through the house, not as an outcast, but as a daughter claiming what was rightfully hers. A few photographs tucked away in drawers, a quilt Dolores had pieced together in the lonely years, and a battered music box she remembered from childhood. Each object told a story of love, perseverance, and quiet dignity, gifts her mother had given her that reached beyond any material inheritance. Ruth stopped by that afternoon, bringing a pie and quiet support. As they shared a slice in the kitchen, Ruth leaned in. You did what no one else dared, Liv. There's a freedom in telling the truth, even when it hurts worse than the lies. Olivia smiled, relief softening her features for the first time since her return. For the first time in forever, I feel like I belong. Not because someone says I do, but because I stood up for myself and Mom. Thank you, Ruth. I couldn't have gotten through this alone. Later, Olivia walked the perimeter of the property, pausing at each corner of her past. The playground where laughter once turned to tears, the attic window where she watched storms roll in, the porch steps where Dolores first announced they were leaving. Nothing about Willow Creek had changed much, but Olivia no longer felt haunted by it. She understood now that her power was not in what she'd inherited, but what she'd overcome. As dusk settled again, Olivia met Amanda one more time, this time at their father's grave. They stood in silence, the weight of regrets and fresh beginnings thick in the cooling air. I hope he finds peace, Amanda said softly. Olivia nodded. I hope we do too. The words were a benediction. The sisters walked back to the house together, not fully healed, but no longer enemies. Olivia sensed freedom, hers, Amanda's, and even her late mother's. The years of judgment, suspicion, and rivalry had finally given way to something purer. Liberation, hard-won and honest. The Carter family's story, a story of pride, secrets, betrayal, and courage, was no longer a private wound. It was a testament to the power of truth, forgiveness, and the indomitable will of a woman determined to reclaim her life. Healing and new beginnings. The days after the confrontation unfolded in a gentler rhythm. Willow Creek, ever quick to judge and slow to forget, seemed to exhale as the Carter family drama faded at last from front porch gossip to a quiet hum in the background. For the first time in years, Olivia woke without the familiar tightness in her chest, a tension she had worn so long that its absence felt like a new skin. She spent her mornings walking the back roads, inhaling the scent of pine and distant wood smoke. There was peace, sometimes punctuated by bursts of sadness when she passed the whitewashed church or the now empty playground. But Olivia felt lighter, her steps following a cadence set by hope rather than bitterness. She was no longer a visitor, but something closer to a survivor, perhaps even a native once more. Inside the Carter house, the changes were quieter, subtler. Amanda moved through the halls, subdued, her sharp edges dampened by humility and remorse. The two sisters fell into a tentative routine. Silent breakfasts, brief exchanges over afternoon tea, and the occasional shared smile when they remembered something from childhood neither of them could quite hate. There was no sudden intimacy. Wounds ran too deep for that. But there was a new kind of honesty between them. Each was learning to see the other not as an adversary, but as a fellow traveler from the same broken home. One rainy morning, Amanda appeared at Olivia's bedroom door, an envelope in her hand. You should have these, she said simply, extending a bundle of faded photographs held together with a piece of twine. Inside were snapshots from summers long past. Olivia and Amanda playing in the creek, their father grinning underneath the enormous oak in the backyard, Dolores caught in a moment of rare laughter. I've never seen some of these, Olivia confessed, tracing her mother's smile with her fingertip. I found them in one of Dad's old travel bags in the attic. There are letters, too. He never mailed them. Most are addressed to you and your mother, Amanda said quietly. She hesitated, her voice trembling. He wanted to fix things, especially near the end. I think about that a lot. It's never too late to try, Olivia answered, surprising herself as much as her sister. That exchange marked a subtle turning point. Olivia and Amanda began to talk, sometimes even laugh, about the impossible expectations that had been foisted on them. By their father, their mothers, by the town itself. Stories surfaced. Between them, stories they'd forgotten or never knew. The hiding spots in the garden, the secret code words they'd invented in grade school, the pranks Amanda and Ruth once played on the starchy kindergarten teacher. For the first time, their shared memories felt more like a bridge than a boundary. Amid these small reconciliations, Olivia made a decision. She would not run back to New York out of habit, nor stay in Willow Creek simply to prove a point. Instead, she would give herself the space to choose, on her terms. She sorted through her belongings with care, packing what mattered and gifting what didn't to local shelters and neighbors. Among the things she kept were her mother's quilt, her father's battered old pipe, and the music box Amanda had found buried in a kitchen drawer. Ruth continued to be a steadfast presence. She delivered casseroles and groceries to both sisters, stopping on the porch to share the latest bits of town news. People are watching, Liv, she said one afternoon over coffee. Most are rooting for you, even if they don't say it outright. You did something here. Showed folks you don't have to accept old wrongs just because they're tradition. Would you ever leave, Ruth? Olivia asked, staring at the pale autumn sun slanting through the kitchen window. Once or twice I thought about it, Ruth admitted, her tone soft. But this is home, not because it's perfect, but because it's where I learned who I am. Maybe that's what you needed too. They sat in contemplative silence for a while, the simple comfort of companionship enough. As the legal settlement was finalized, Jessica Landry confirmed that the estate would be divided more fairly. Martha, shorn of her manipulations and her dignity, took up residence with a distant cousin on the other side of town. Amanda, after much soul-searching, chose to keep her distance from her mother, needing space to reckon with her own complicity and guilt. Though neither sister would ever forget the havoc Martha wrought, Olivia sensed that forgiveness, at least the possibility of it, might one day appear at the horizon. For herself, Olivia dedicated time to causes her mother would have approved of. Teaching evening writing classes at the library, starting a scholarship fund for children from divided families, volunteering at the community center. These commitments anchored her, giving her purpose beyond the Carter name. She found herself savoring things she'd once dismissed: homemade bread, the slow unfolding of an afternoon, the joy of quiet rather than the frantic rush of Manhattan life. In the garden, Amelia had let grow wild. Olivia planted new seeds, sunflowers, basil, and late-season pumpkins. She dug into the earth with her bare hands, feeling a kinship with her mother, her ancestors, and finally, even herself. Each seedling felt like a prayer for something better, and as green shoots sprang from the soil, she told herself she was worthy of starting again. The house slowly transformed, less a museum of Carter regrets than a lived-in home. Olivia invited neighbors for tea, hosted a small harvest dinner with Ruth, and a handful of cousins who remembered the Carters before the fractures. Laughter returned to the house, tentative but real. Each day, Olivia felt less tethered to her past. Her burdens lightened, replaced by the possibilities of the future. Where she once saw only shadows, she now saw open doors. One evening, as she stood out on the porch, Amanda joined her, 2 steaming cups in hand. "I don't know where I belong right now," Amanda admitted, voice tentative. "Neither do I," Olivia replied honestly. "But maybe that's the point. We get to find out together, or at least on our own terms." Amanda nodded, a small, genuine smile breaking through. "Thank you for not giving up on me, Olivia. I don't think I'll ever deserve it, but I'll keep trying. We both will." They clinked their mugs together and watched the fireflies dance in the twilight. As autumn gave way to the quiet promise of winter, Olivia Carter no longer saw herself as an exile or an outsider. She was a woman who had faced the ghosts of her past, forged new bonds, and planted the seeds of a new life. Healing, she realized, was not a single act, but 100 small choices, each one an act of faith, in herself, in her family, and in tomorrow. Open ending. The first snow arrived early that year, dusting the rooftops of Willow Creek and softening the sharp lines of autumn's end. Streets glimmered at dusk, and the world seemed to hold its breath, waiting, perhaps, for some final judgment, or for the ordinary miracle of life going on. For Olivia Carter, that pale morning haze felt less like a conclusion and more like the gentle start of something unnamed. She woke in the Carter house as a new tenant, no longer an exile rattling through haunted halls, but someone who chose to stay or go as she wished. The room she claimed as her own was modest. Once a sewing room, window facing north, the dawn light thin and hopeful. Olivia had painted the walls a soft green, hung family photos newly discovered in time-worn trunks, and arranged her mother's quilt at the foot of the narrow bed. For the first time in years, the space felt neither borrowed nor defensive, but entirely hers. The estate's legal matters settled slowly, as such things always do. The Carter fortune, diminished by secrets and lawyers, was equitably divided per the revised agreements. Amanda took on the hardware store with a humble diligence, learning to greet each customer as her own, navigating the world without Martha's shadow at her shoulder. Occasionally, Olivia would see her sister in the town square, discussing local building projects or shaking hands with former critics. There was a hesitancy in Amanda, a vulnerability she no longer tried to disguise, but also a quiet pride in building, something honest from the ashes. As for Martha, she faded from the Carter narrative. Stripped of power and status, Martha lived with a distant cousin, her villainy now mostly a memory retold in shushed stories. She was hard, but she was broken too, Ruth once said, pouring tea by the window. Some wounds run so deep, they become a kind of prison. All we can do is not let them become ours. Ruth, steadfast as always, remained Olivia's anchor and touchstone. Sunday lunches turned into book club afternoons and service projects at the church. "You're still the best pie crust maker in town," Olivia teased more than once, remembering how much laughter used to fill Ruth's kitchen when the world outside seemed cruel. Yet it was Olivia's own future that felt most uncertain and promising, an intersection of grief, possibility, and the stubborn pulse of hope. The question of staying or leaving pressed in gently each morning as she brewed her coffee by the frosted window. New York still called to her in some ways, the thrill of anonymity, the crush of ambition, and neon and distant sirens. But the slow comfort of Willow Creek spoke just as powerfully. The chance to create community, to let her story be known and understood rather than erased. She started writing again, not the legal briefs or hurried reports she had mastered in the city, but true stories, memoir fragments, sketches of her childhood, letters never sent to her mother. The library manager, a kind-eyed woman named May, suggested Olivia host a series of creative writing workshops. At first, only 2 children attended, then half a dozen adults, all carrying their own hidden wounds, their need to be heard. Week by week, Olivia's circle grew, and with it, her sense of belonging. The garden Amanda once let grow wild became a canvas for healing. In the brittle cold, Olivia learned about winterizing beds and protecting roots for spring. She planted bulbs with Ruth and Amanda, hyacinths, daffodils, tulips, buried deep as a promise that come April, there would be color again. Working quietly in the earth, the 3 women found a wordless peace, forgiveness not declared in speeches, but lived in simple, stubborn acts. On Thanksgiving, Amanda invited Olivia to dinner at the old house, still heavy with history, but lighter for their honesty. Mr. Forsyth, the store's longtime manager, brought fresh bread. Cousin Ruth made her sweet potato casserole. There were awkward pauses and bouts of laughter, and the realization that, broken as they were, the Carter family was not beyond repair. Later, the sisters walked the chilly perimeter of the property, boots crunching on frosted grass. Amanda paused at the fence line, staring at the orchard's faded trees. "I never said thank you," she confessed, voice shaking in the night air, "for not letting me destroy everything, for giving me a chance when I thought I didn't deserve one." Olivia put her arm over Amanda's shoulders. "We all want second chances, Amanda. You gave me one too, just by admitting you were scared. Maybe the whole town needed to see that we're allowed to start over." Amanda laughed weakly. "It's terrifying. Not sure I ever learned how." "Me neither," Olivia admitted. "We'll figure it out together, or apart if we want. That's the point." As winter deepened, Olivia's choices unfolded before her, as open as the snow-covered meadow stretching to the creek. She could leave, return to New York with lessons learned and wounds mending, or she could remain, forging a new chapter in the town that had once cast her out. There were job offers from nearby cities, others from within Willow Creek, invitations for lectures, even a tentative romance that grew from long conversations at the coffee shop. For the first time, her life was not determined by old guilt, rivalry, or the weight of Carter tradition. On the first day of the new year, Olivia returned to her mother's grave with a note tucked in her pocket. She knelt by the frostbitten earth and whispered, "We're okay, Mom. I'm okay. You don't have to worry anymore." It was a promise made and kept, bittersweet and liberating. A pledge to live boldly, honestly, and with forgiveness at her core. As she rose and walked back toward Main Street, the world felt vast and borderless. There would still be days of regret, storms of memory, afternoons when loneliness threatened to return. But Olivia knew something vital now. Her strength was not in what she had lost or even what she had won, but in what she had chosen. Her voice, her dignity, her freedom to write her own next page. Whether she stayed in Willow Creek or walked away toward distant horizons would be her decision alone. Either way, she would carry with her the lessons of home. Justice and fairness were not always given, but could be claimed by those courageous enough to demand them. Forgiveness was less an act than a journey, and a woman's strength, hard-won and resilient, could turn even the bitterest legacy into a foundation for something new. From the edge of the Carter property, Olivia Carter looked back only once, then forward, carrying the story of her past, the hope of her future, and the quiet, steady conviction that whatever came next was hers to choose.